afternoon, everybody. Those of us in Trinidad, it's cold and wet.
Hi, everybody from St. Lucia.
Where it's sunny.
Yeah, a little overcast, but it's okay. Not much rain.
Good. Very good. So as we wait a few minutes for people to join, and people are joining. Yeah, so we're already in the end of April. This is our 4th episode. I'm quite excited to talk about this topic this evening. And we have such esteemed guests. I'm really looking forward to dive into the topic of financial literacy. Yes, I think we should get started. So as creatives, we, financial literacy may sound a bit daunting. And I kind of said, let me do a little research and see what it actually, means. And financial literacy basically is the ability to understand and effectively use various financial skills, including your personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. And as a creative, you may not really, that might sound like, oh my God, that is so boring. But at the same time, it's really important for you to know and understand how your money flows. And even if you don't do it yourself, you want at least to understand what your accountant or your business manager is presenting to you. And financial literacy is basically the foundation of your relationship with money. And money is not an evil, so as a creative, you kind of feel, oh gosh, money, but no, to be able to do what you do, you need the funds, right? And to be successful in what you do, you need to know how to manage that money, or at least understand how that money is flowing, the income, the outcome, and so on. And the earlier you start, the better off you'll be. Because of course, those who start early, and I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had Nyla Blackman on, and she was telling us a bit about what, she's put in place. And, Nyla is only like 23 years old. So that is the kind of, once you, as a creative, start generating income, you want to look at how is the best ways to invest it to support your business model. And, we have some guests this evening, Jodi Boodhoo and Mariame Robinson, who are going to really drill down a little bit more into what this means and the tools that you all can use. But I found a few strategies online that I thought were interesting, and they're the experts, so they'll let us know if really these are good pointers. So some of the strategies to improve your financial literacy skills would include create a budget, pay yourself first. So that's an interesting concept, because as a creative, we always, we pay ourselves last. Sometimes we don't pay ourselves at all. But here they say pay yourself first. So I want the experts to let me know if they agree with that. Pay your bills promptly. Don't build up too much debt. Also get to know your credit score, check your credit score, but that's more for the US market. But I think it's important too to understand, where you are in your debt to asset ratio. And if that sounds very foreign, we can, talk a little bit more about it in the question and answer segment. Manage your debt, I said that, and then invest in your future. Like, what is the future? So those are some of the strategies that I pulled up. And as I said, hopefully our guest this evening will share a little bit more in depth with us. And we actually also have a giveaway this evening where it will be a session with Mr. Jodi Boodhoo. So let me, without hesitation, introduce Jodi, because Jodi is actually the vice chair of C15 Studios. And he is a founding partner of the Aspire Fund Management Limited, which is our mother company. And Jodi is based in St. Lucia. He's a former banker with business interests in different sectors, including petrol, service stations, financial technology, and event management. He has a keen interest in startup investing and has chaired the steering committee for the setup of St. Lucia's National Incubator and Accelerator Boost. So people in St. Lucia may know of this program. And he's a former deputy chairman of Invest St. Lucia, as well as a former board director of the St. Lucia Tourist Board. Currently, he's a seed investor and chairman of Penny Pinch, which is a licensed digital wallet platform based in St. Lucia. So of course, we're interested in that too, because that is kind of the future of the whole blockchain and the digital wallet, and understanding how that works. And also, in the Caribbean, we took so long to get into the e-commerce race. Let's hope that we don't take as long with the digital wallet and so on. So without any further ado, let's bring on Mr. Jodi Boodhoo. Jodi, good evening.
Good evening, Lorraine. Good evening, Mariame. Good evening, everybody who's logged in on social media, via Facebook, Instagram, Zoom, YouTube as well, I believe. Glad to be here. When Lorraine asked me to be a guest on this show, I didn't hesitate to take it up, because I have been not just on the business side, but through an events company that I'm a partner in, sort of on the creative side. And I'm someone who has, whatever skills I've gained, a lot of it yes, I'm university educated, but a lot of the skills that I've gained and the experience that I've gained is going through the fire, right? And I think a theme here, I don't want to bore anybody with mundane financial concepts, different performance ratios and all that stuff. That's kind of boring. That's very technical. That's something for an accountant or a CFO to sink their teeth in. I think here, the theme is really financial discipline, a certain financial discipline, right? So if you will, I'll just give you, my life experience. I really learned about governance through a lot of reading. I am a chartered director, but before I was a chartered director, I learned by doing at board levels, through my own companies, through sitting on government bodies. And that financial discipline is pretty simple. So let's just say you are a promoter, or you're a musician, or you're an artist, right? There's income and there's expenses. Those are the sort of two basic concepts. And then there's your profit. But all of that has to be booked within a governance architecture, which really is whatever money you're making from whatever it is that you're doing. Remember that as a creative, you are your own business. Like, a lot of creatives believe that they're not business people. Well, yeah, you're selling your creative concepts, or your paintings, or whatever it is, or your music for money, right? And who does that money belong to? In a sense, it belongs to you, but remember, you are that business. You're a sole trader. So all of that money should be going through a single operating account, where you have a budget, an annual budget and a monthly budget. You are taking a standard drawing every month, so that you can cover your expenses, right? And then obviously at the end of the year, what's left over, you have to know whether or not you're going to be in expansion mode, or whether it is that you're comfortable with your situation, and you probably want to use these funds personally, maybe to buy a car or to build a house or whatever it is. But in all of this, there has to be a certain amount of financial discipline. Now, if you are part of, say, a bigger establishment like a promotions company, and I know a lot of promoters in your space in Trinidad and in Jamaica, and millions of dollars pass through those accounts, right? And you need an even better discipline. So you have to set up a board of directors. You all have to sit as a board once a month. Make sure you've got an accountant on board, and that accountant is doing the company's management accounts on a monthly basis. And it's very simple. Over a cup of coffee or a pizza, you guys can huddle and go over these management accounts. You're not the one doing it, the accountant is the one doing it. Now, Lorraine just said that you have to have a certain amount of financial literacy, which is correct. You don't have to go to university for it. You can go on Coursera, you can go on edX, you can go on YouTube and get crash courses in how to interpret simple things like financial statements, right? It's very, very important that you understand basically how to assess the financial health of your enterprise, whether it is being a sole trader, whether it is being, you're part of a structured business, whether it is that, it's a group of businesses. It is all the same thing. It's just on a bigger level, depending on how wide your enterprise is. Lorraine, I don't want to say too much without giving you a chance to ask any questions in between.
No, well, it's very interesting, and I've been listening avidly, but I was thinking actually, when you said that about the YouTube and so on, what the thought that came into my mind was like, why don't we teach, these are things that they should teach even at high school level. Like I always remember when my son graduated, who's now today a businessman, and one of the things he said is like, they never even taught me in school how to read my bank statement. And it's true, like those are things that,
Yes.
are so necessary in your day-to-day life. And I mean, I remember my grandmother, she passed, she didn't know how to write a check. Like, she just didn't know how to write a check.
Right.
So, and often it's because people are intimidated that, this is, so what I want to find out is like, what are the advantages of being financially literate, would you say, like on a practical level?
Okay, so if we look at some of the creatives who've done very well, right, on a global scale or even on a local or regional scale, financial literacy, either through them or their team, would never happen if you didn't have financially literate people. Either you yourself are financially literate, or your team members are. So I'll give you a perfect example, right? You have an operating account in a bank, and all your revenue is going through that account. And because you are financially literate, you have budgeted properly. You are taking a drawing every month. You may have some loan facilities. Your priority would be obviously to cover your expenses and your loan facilities. Remember that the banks are aggregating this data on everybody. So when you start getting into expansion mode, because you have employed a certain discipline and financial literacy in managing your affairs, it is very easy for a bank or any financial institution for that matter, or even an investor, to say, it's very easy for you to provide these investors and financial institutions with the required information, because you've got your management accounts done, you've got your audited financial statements done. And even if you don't, as a sole trader, the banker who is assessing your credit worthiness is able to see how you manage your cash flow in your account. And it opens up a world of opportunities where financing and bringing on investors are concerned. So that is one of the biggest pluses with having that financial literacy and actually employing that discipline, that governance framework within which you operate. So for expansion, it is absolutely necessary. I mean, I deal with a lot of creatives in the startup space, and it's very sad to see that a lot of them have some good concepts, but there is no financial discipline in the way they manage their affairs, and sometimes it's just a lot to take on. Investors don't want to have to handhold all the time, so you have to be ready. So get yourself, tool yourself with the right financial tools so that you are always ready for expansion and ready to take the next step.
Fantastic, Jodi. That is some great advice, and we'll take some questions and answers at the end of the two segments. So I'm going to segue now into Mariame McIntosh Robinson. And I mean, we're really honored to have you here. I know you're super busy. I mean, your resume is amazing. So Mariame is a global financial service leader with over 20 years experience, you know, as a P&L leader, investor, board member, and advisor to leading companies in the US and the Caribbean. Currently, she's the president and CEO of First Global Bank. She joined in 2016 to lead the bank's transformation and strategic pursuit of financial inclusion. Prior to that, she was partner at Portland Private Equity, which was the largest private equity fund manager focused on the Caribbean. And prior to this, she spent 9 years at Bain & Company and McKinsey & Company, where she advised Fortune 500 CEOs and their teams on growth strategy and implementation. Wow. She also is a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, Mariame, I'm curious. Well, first of all, welcome. Good evening.
Hi. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. Thanks, Lorraine.
So much
to
for
see everyone, or at least see your names. Hi, Jodi.
I'm really curious to find out, like, how did you reach in this career path? Like, what was your passion as a, you know, in high school? What took you here? You know?
Okay. Well, very briefly, just in terms of my background, so I grew up in Jamaica. My favorite subject in high school was physics. My dad was like, you know, in those days when I grew up in the 80s, 90s, you either became an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. So I figured engineer. And so my dad suggested I apply to MIT, which is how I ended up going to MIT. And it was while I was there that I understood, I got introduced to management consulting. Consulting is an industry that takes people regardless of their age and background, and you're put to solve the hardest problems for businesses working with their senior leadership teams. So I found that very stimulating. I think for me, I'm very driven by impact and how can we bring more access, whether it's education, which is my other passion, or finance to people's lives that we can help to achieve our full potential. So if each individual is achieving their full potential as a nation and a world, we're that much closer to achieving our full potential. So that's kind of what drives me. I actually went into private equity because I wanted to come back into my region. I was in Bain, New York. I was planning to be a career consultant, and I got asked to join this fund. I thought I'd try it out, and that opened up the world of finance to me. And that's when I realized, you know, and it opened up the world of SMEs, how important it is when you're building wealth for your families and yourself, and by default, your countries. Owning a business is so important. Again, when I was growing up in the 80s, 90s in high school, they didn't teach us about the value of owning a business. It was all about going to work for someone. And so I have a great appreciation for what it takes to really start a business. I'm really happy to see where the world is going in all of our different countries in the Caribbean. There's so many more young people going out now to own their own businesses. But the biggest barrier to being successful as an entrepreneur and a business owner, I realized, was access to capital. And the thing around access to capital wasn't that it's actually so hard to access it. It was just demystifying the how. There's a very specific, methodical, formulaic way to access capital. And if you determine what your business is offering and what you're about, and what the capital providers are offering and what they're about, and you find the right set of fit and you understand their process, you should get the capital. I fundamentally believe it. I've seen it time and time again where businesses that don't get capital, it's actually more because they just didn't go to the right capital provider, or they didn't know the process. And it's not secret, it's not secretive, you know. So what drives me, I'm very passionate about the finance world on this whole arena of access. And so I love what you're doing, Lorraine. Keep up the work. And, you know, I really think the more we can have dialogue to just demystify and share how to progress our businesses, the better. I was actually sitting on the board of First Global Bank while at the fund, so it wasn't a portfolio company, and the CEO left, so the board asked me to step in to run the bank. So that's how I ended up being an operator, and that's been a fantastic experience as well. I've learned a lot about just how we operate as countries in our region. We have so much creative talent, not just the creative sector, just generally as a people. And I've also learned, you know, how diverse we are in terms of what motivates us. And I see leadership shifting. I see how we interact with customers shifting. As a banker, I've told people we're not about being a banker. We're actually in the consumer products industry, of which our offering is banking. So it's not about, well, Verona needs something and I have a checklist. It's actually about, we need to figure out how can we best serve Verona, given her, you know, background and so forth. I'm just using as an example, and then figure out how we, you know, work with her to ensure that we get the capital to her. So there's a shift I see going on in the industry around the world. And I think fintech companies, including what Jodi is invested in, I think is coming in to do exactly that, put the customer at the heart of all our decisions, and it's disrupting the traditional financial services sector, which bodes well for all of us on this call and just generally SMEs and businesses and individuals as a whole. So that's kind of my background mixed in with some philosophies in a nutshell.
That's really, I mean, you're a superwoman, like literally. I mean, yes. And the fact that that you're considering the global impact, I find that is so motivating, because literally, you know, what we are doing, we are leaving, you know, legacies and templates for future generations. So, you know, if we can improve on what was done before, I think we make a mark, you know. So thank you for that, and thank you for that global you know, approach, and really super congrats. I was wondering a little bit, what would be like, what are for you financial literacy? How would you guide creatives in that area?
Sure. Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I mean, I won't repeat what Jodi said. I fully agree with all the points that he made. And, you know, I think some other tips that I would want to share. I think the first thing is, whenever you look, so as a business, and I like to talk about access to capital, because that tends to be the biggest barrier to pushing forward, you know, of one of the biggest barriers for businesses. So the first thing is this idea around, if I need capital, you usually need to write some version of what the capital will be used for. So if you're starting up, it's a business plan. If you have a business and you're trying to get to the next level, it's some version of a business plan. But the myth I wanted to demystify is the idea that you can outsource your business plan to someone because I don't know the numbers. You know, I really, my counsel to everyone who runs a business, whether it's a dollar business, a loss-making business, or, you know, a fairly stable, medium-sized business, all of us have it within us to write our business plan. It's a very formulaic type of exercise. The first thing I would say is start with the financials. And again, you don't have to be into financials to do it. I had a friend come to me one time with a great business idea, and I said, that's so good. So what did the numbers look like? She said, Mariame, I don't deal with the numbers. I said, actually, you do. What would the budget be? If you're going to set up this business, what are all your expenses? That would be the cash outflows, essentially. So you write down all your expenses. That's your cash outflow. That's your budget, essentially, for the next 12 months. And all of us know what that looks like. Then on the cash inflow side, which is your revenue or your income, right? You say, well, what are some ways in which I can earn revenue? And you put some assumptions down and multiply out the assumptions to get to some revenue over a period of a year or a few months or whatever it might be. That gives you cash inflow, cash outflow, and you're matching it, right? And that gives you a sense of whether you'll be negative, and then eventually get into the positive, etc. That cash flow projections, all of us can do. You can do it on the back of a piece of paper, you know, all of us can do that. And then once you have that, now there are the elements of a business plan. So the big elements that people are usually looking for, number one, it would be really important to just explain the business model. What does the business do? Just in a few paragraphs, very simply, very layman's term, what is the business doing? Secondly, how are you differentiated? So what pain point are you solving? Why are you doing it differently? Why should customers come to you? Those are the kind of things that will answer the question of how you're differentiated. And that can be included in what you do. The third element is not in order, just things that are, you know, I think critical in a business plan is the idea about what's your team. People are looking for who's going to work with you. If you've never worked together before, just what's the experience level of the team that's joining you? How do you make decisions? What's your governance look like? I think Jodi spoke a little bit about, you know, what, do you have a board? Is it a family board? Just those types of things. I think you want to be very explicit there. And then the other thing, of course, is the financial projections. And of course, if you have any information on the market. So who are the largest competitors? Is it very fragmented? Is it one or two that you see yourselves trying to compete with? And it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be very clear and very, you know, it can take the reader through in a very logical way. So this idea of outsourcing the business plan team, I think everyone can write their first draft of a business plan, and then you can outsource the draft if you'd like. So that's the first thing that, you know, I see time and time again. And I think persons who write their business plan first get a better version, they get there quicker, and you're now invested in the process. The second thing I wanted to share as a tip would be, and this is a quick one, all of us, whether we're business owners, whether we are just individuals with no business, we all have bank accounts. I hope you should get one, but we all have bank accounts, and we should call our banker once a month, at least once a quarter. And what do I mean by call our banker? I mean literally call the bank and say, hi, I'm Mariam. I don't have any loan. I don't need any loans right now. I just want to know who's the person I need to talk to when I have a question, when I have a need. Because every bank wants to reach their customer. Every bank wants a customer to be in their setup, whether it's your personal bank or your business banker. Once you have a personal or business bank, and we're all entitled to one. So you don't have to be super rich or big business. We all want to bank you. So once you have a banker, you proactively call them every month or every 3 months. And when you call them, you can say, I just checking in, life is good. I just made an investment. I just did this. I just sold my painting. I just, had a huge party and I made some good money. You don't even have to talk about your business, but just form that relationship. You don't have to wait till you need something from the bank, and you don't have to feel like you're wasting the bank's time by just calling to be like, hey, how's it going? Because by the time you need a loan or some capital, which will happen at some point, it's so much easier for that banker to shepherd your loan application through the institution because they've been in touch with you. And yes, I always tell my team, we should be reaching out to customers, but truthfully, we should reach out to the bank as well. When I got my first mortgage, it was actually abroad. They told me it was going to take 90 days. And I was in between grad school and about to work. And I was like, why would it take 90 days? So I just kept calling the bank every 2 days. Hey, how's it going? Which step is it at now? What comes next? And that's what I did because I had time on my hands. And I got my mortgage in less than 60 days. And so that's just an example of if you stay in touch with the bank, which you have every right to do, it demystifies the bank and it helps to get things through for you. And then the final thing I would just say, in terms of access to capital, I think it's important to be able to access loans. And we can talk about that later if that's a question. It's a very methodical process as well, but also equity. Equity is very important. This is where you get cash into your business in exchange for a stake in your business. And we shouldn't shy away from that. The biggest things to note, and we can go into detail if you'd like, but I won't go into that now, but just the biggest things to note on the equity side, you have friends and family, you have angel investors. We have angel investors, at least in Jamaica and no in Barbados. I'm not sure about other countries, but those angel funds are open to the Caribbean. So 10 years ago when I was in private equity, we didn't even have these things, right? They will do smaller amounts. You don't have to show any whole heap of information. Once they buy into your concept and what you're trying to do, they'll support if you can convince them, etc. And then there's also larger funds. So I think, and incubators and so forth. So I think it's important to understand the equity capital space because it won't be sufficient to just take debt. So that's going to be a key thing. The second thing is just around valuation. Your business is worth something. Every business, everything that you do is worth something. It's just about how you determine, and it's as much an art as it is a science. So the only thing I'd say there are a couple of methodologies to use that you can do again on the back of a paper, do the methodologies, and then it becomes a negotiation. So don't shy away from it and don't feel like we have to agree on valuation in the first conversation because that would be kind of awkward and it's not usual. So stay the course and that's okay. And the final thing I'll say related to this access to capital term to keep in mind is a lot of businesses in the Caribbean I found when I was investing a decade ago, very reluctant to give up to add people to their board. So most equity investing on the equity side, they're going to want to join your board. If you don't have a board, they'll help you form a board. And the truth is they're very invested in you being successful. Because unlike with debt as a bank, we just want our money every month. And if things don't go well, we look for the security to enforce. On the equity side, they want you to be successful because they actually cash out when you've hit your milestone, we've repaid the debt, and that's when they take their return. So they're very aligned with supporting you as the business owner, as the entrepreneur. And for that, they usually want a board seat. So it's okay to give up a board seat and to have them come into your business because they're actually much more invested in ensuring that you are successful. I find in the Caribbean sometimes because not so comfortable with small groups of people that work closely and live closely together. We don't want to share a business. We don't want people in our business. But it's normal in terms of how you take in equity capital and the governance and how investors can help your business, you as a creative owner and entrepreneur, grow and be successful. So I'll just end there, but those were kind of my tips that I thought about.
Wow. Fantastic. Those are some real nuggets. I'm so glad that we've recorded this because I think people will really gain a lot from listening back to it. And that's interesting because, you know, like at C15 Studios, this is, you know, why one of our missions is really to partner and support. And, you know, we want you to be successful, obviously, because, you know, then everybody earns from it. So it's not, you know, we want to work with you to make your business successful. So don't feel, and because it's true what you said, a lot of creatives, and you were nice about it, a lot of creatives are very suspicious and cautious with financial institutions because they feel like, you know, what is this? They want to take our business away from us, and this guy, you know, that's not the goal. The goal isn't to take anything away. It's actually to improve and make more profitable for everybody involved. So great information, and we're already at 6:30, so time goes fast when we're having fun, for sure. And so I would like us to open up and see if our guests or, you know, our audience has any questions. Do we have any questions, Maria, at all? Maria is handling.
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. If anybody wants to, they can put it in the chat, or we can, you know, open up the mic and let you speak, I think.
Yeah, Lorraine, I just wanted to just to go over something that Mariame had said.
Sure.
Regarding, you know, we have this culture. I know it's prevalent in St. Lucia and probably the wider Caribbean as well. You know, when people talk about, you know, they want to access capital, the first thing they do is they go to a bank, right? And the traditional financial institutions, you know, security is the holy grail. Like, if you don't have security against which they can take a pledge, I mean, you know, you're done for. But in North America, in Europe, you know, equity funding is huge. It's massive, and we must not shy away from that, because sometimes, especially for startups, the worst thing you can do is mess around with your capital structure and just laden it with a set of debt. You know, sometimes if you take in some equity funds, just like, you know, you can take an approach where somebody invests some money in your business in exchange for shares, but you have an agreement to buy back that equity down the line. So it's not as if there aren't different ways to skin, as you'd say, different ways to skin a cat. You can. So where the traditional financial institutions sort of, you know, it's not that they make it hard, but, you know, they're governed by certain policies, credit risk policies. Equity financing is a bit more nimble, and they'll take on a lot more risk than traditional financial institutions. So, yes, you know, you sort of have to open up your mind, or your minds rather, to taking on equity financing.
Yes. I see we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, so what business model should I register as a creative? Should it be a limited corporation? I would like to have multiple projects and one business brand.
You can operate as a sole trader, where you just register a business name, or you can incorporate a company. It really depends on, you know, where you are in your business. You know, if somebody's not doing, you know, let's say you're doing probably $10,000 a month, right, in the sales, it may be a bit cost prohibitive to go the route of incorporating a company, because at the end of the day, you know, you have annual returns to file on an annual basis. You have renewal fees, company renewal fees. So you have to actually account for all of those things. But, you know, if you're doing a healthy set of top line in terms of sales, by all means, separate your personal from your business and go the route of incorporating. You can get a lot of that information through some of the government departments. For instance, in St. Lucia, we've got a few places where you can go. You can go to, you know, Export St. Lucia. You can go to the Small Business Development Unit. You can go to Invest St. Lucia. They can all give you advice on how to go about incorporating, and sometimes what's even best for you. You can go to accountants. You can go to attorneys as well. So there are a number of places that you can go to, but there are some one-stop shops that actually handle small and medium-sized businesses. Like I alluded to, the small business development unit in St. Lucia. And I think they have counterparts in every government in the Caribbean, where you can get all sorts of information on incorporating, registering business names, even concessions, tax concessions on whatever it is that you do. You may be in I don't know, manufacturing garments, or you may be a designer, or you make furniture. There are tons of tax concessions that you can get as well, based on the jurisdiction. But make sure you check out the relevant government departments, and you can speak to some accountants and attorneys as well.
Yeah, and what is good too, that with, you know, COVID, a lot of stuff has gone online. A lot of government, you know, all the websites now here in Trinidad, you know, now everything is, you know, online. So it's easier to find the information, and they have forms you can download and so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, even the lookout, and definitely, I mean, you know, my first response to that should have been, you know, look out for an incubator or an accelerator. A lot of jurisdictions actually have incubators. They have accelerators. There are international ones as well. You can just go on the websites and you can get a sense of you know, what you should do in certain situations. Just check out the FAQs as well.
Great, thank you for that. We have a couple other questions.
So there's one for Jodi. Can you share some tools that you mentioned? I think they're referring to when you said, tool yourself with the right financial tools. Do you want to specify?
Yeah. So in the absence of getting a formal education, in terms of, you know, going to university or doing a diploma certificate program, if you go on Coursera or you go on edX.com, I mean, there are tons and tons of different programs, whether it be finance programs, coding, science, everything. They are free, right? They have them from the certificates to diplomas, and you can act some of these credits. Some of the programs are transferable to you know, university and college institutions. You would be surprised the schools who actually offer this for free. We're talking about some of the best schools in the world. For instance, when I was interested in private equity, I don't have a formal, like I didn't go to university and study private equity, right? I did a tons of reading on it, learning by doing. I did a free course from the University of Bocconi. And if you wanted the certificate, you just pay $65 and you get it. I didn't need it. I just wanted the information. YouTube as well. Anything that you're interested in, if it is accounting, if it's budgeting, if it is learning how to build an Excel spreadsheet, which everybody should understand how to do. You can find tons of free courses online. You can find it on YouTube. A lot of people don't like to read. They rather watch practical examples over YouTube. You can find it there. So whatever you're looking for, it is there online. In terms of formal tools, like I said, look for a course on Coursera.com or edX.com, and trust me, you will find it in whatever you're looking for, and it's free.
Excellent, that's great. No.
Yeah, can I just add one other quick thing, Lorraine and Jodi? The other thing is, I find that for financial literacy now, the financial institutions are realizing that capacity building is key. So it's not enough to just wait for someone to come to us and say, I need equity if you're a fund, and even more so, I need debt if you're a bank. What the banks are doing, at least I've seen it in Jamaica, and I suspect it's happening elsewhere as well, where they're going out and they're having sessions like this, where they're having conferences, summits, where they're doing information sharing for capacity building. The development financial institutions are also assisting, whether directly or through intermediaries, to give this information out to the public. So if you're SME, I think it's important to ask also just financial institutions to say, hey, do you have any information on how I'd go about setting up a company, how I'd go about ensuring that I have a bookkeeper who's gonna, review my financials, create and review my financials every month. In some instances, you may even want audited financials, but you don't want to go to the big three and pay a significant amount. I find that the FIs are also a good source of information, practical information, depending on what your specific needs are and where you are in your business. I just wanted to share that as well.
Yep, that is so important. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, the questions are now coming in quite fast. And so let us see. I see this one here. I could read it, Maria. What kind of business should a graphic designer who works internationally register their business as? Working with foreign clients who work with NFTs and on the blockchain. It's an interesting dynamic being local, but also working with international clients. So what kind of business would you suggest a graphic designer who works internationally set up? Mariame, Jodi?
Okay. I mean, so I know we're talking about financial literacy here, so I don't want to give too much like specific advice on what kind of business you should start, but from one angle, I'd love to just share in response to that question. And, big shout out on NFTs and blockchains, and this is where the world is going. Is the biggest thing going to be how do you get payments, right? So one of the concerns that a lot of people have in the Caribbean is, I have a business in the Caribbean, I have local clients, but I have clients in other islands, and I have clients in the US and South America, etc. How do I get paid? So that was actually a real barrier, and I would say that barrier has come down significantly, because certainly, at least again, I'll talk about my market. You can set up e-commerce took a huge, it was big acceleration in our region because of COVID, because suddenly now people needed to get paid. So the FIs needed to figure out, how do we ensure that people can get paid very easily through a link or through their website? And we've now integrated a lot of FIs. I don't know any that's not working with a fintech that allows us to integrate into their payments domain and allow for you on your website to receive payment, and it goes straight into your bank account. As to where you register your business, I always say, talk to your tax people first, always, because that's so we wouldn't be able to give advice on that, and you shouldn't take advice from us on that. But also, it's going to be about, from a finance standpoint, how can we ensure that you don't have to have a PayPal account, which has lots of fees, but you can actually, if someone can sit in Florida and pay you in St. Lucia for the business that you have. And I found that we managed to crack that problem in Jamaica much quicker because of COVID, because we're already doing digital payments. So just end there. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. And that is true. That is the future. And of course, as I said earlier, e-commerce really took a while to get going in the Caribbean. So I hope the NFT and blockchain, we want to really be in the now. So, kudos to Jodi for the work he's doing on C15 and definitely looking at that sector very, very closely. Jaluddin Khan, hi. So I see you have, it's a similar question. As a creative, where can I get business and finance plan templates and case studies to study business risk options? And then you ask, where can you get legal business contract templates to ensure my business is protected and I'm protected from liability, copyright, non-payment? I know there are websites that offer these templates. Do you have a name or anything, Jodi, that you want to suggest?
There are tons, and I mean, the internet is littered with templates. I always caution against just grabbing a template and using it. If you've got a friend that's an attorney, you can grab a few templates, have them take a quick read, because I mean, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, certain things apply, certain things don't apply. So you need to be very careful. You can also check an incubator, you can check a business development unit. Some of them actually have some of these templates. It is okay to browse the internet and get some sort of concepts, because you might you might browse for a few templates, right? And you're looking for a few specific things. And there's always an occurrence that you may have overlooked. oh, maybe I'm looking at this template and it is actually shielding me from a certain thing that I didn't even conceive of. So go through the, pull down about 3 or 4 of them, beg a friend of yours who's an attorney, to look at it, whether this template can hold up, can stand the test. Go to your development units that are, part of relevant government departments. Go to the incubators, accelerators. It's not an easy thing, because if you had to go to a law firm and have them draft something up for you, it's going to be very expensive. But you have to learn to be resourceful. So pull whatever you can pull from quality websites. When I started off in business, there's a lot of stuff I pulled from the net, and I just made use of it. They've never been tested in a court of law, so I don't know if it stand the test of time, but the counterparty surely knew that there was some guidance. They were bound by something, and it kind of worked. But yeah, go pull off some stuff from the internet. Tons of websites. Go to Investopedia. Investopedia is a pretty good resource. It's like an encyclopedia for investing. And
yeah,
business.
well, actually, that's where I got the information on financial literacy. That's the website I went to, Investopedia. So.
The Investopedia is your sort of crash course on all things financial and investment. So just go to investopedia.com, take a look at it, check out your incubators, check out your accelerators, beg your friends who are lawyers as well.
And on the legal side, I like LegalZoom, but I guess LegalZoom tends to be kind of US focused. I've used it before for personal things. That's also not a bad site to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have one last, well, it's a question, but I don't think it's not really the topic today, but I'm going to mention it because patents. So Alison is saying patents are difficult to acquire in the Caribbean. What advice can you give in attaining within the Caribbean? So that's actually interesting, because next month our topic is intellectual property. And we'll be covering this this more in detail. I don't know if you all have any thoughts on it right now in terms of patents, and how do you?
I think this is a great opportunity for Alison to tune in again.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly, because we're gonna have a specialist on who's really going to talk about this, and we know how important it is, because of course.
One thing I wanted.
Go ahead, go Mariame.
No, one thing I wanted to mention, I don't think it gives hope to all of us, is that the IDB has, along with some other stakeholders, I think CDB as well, has sponsored it's a 2-year plus project, probably 3 years, project where we're looking at intellectual property to figure out how the financial services sector can use it as collateral. So this is a big point, because what the banks will tell you is, I can't use a collateral, I can't sell it and trade it in the secondary market, but you're sitting on something of great value as someone in the creative sector. So there's a number of different elements. How do you value it? Could I do training now? How do we set up the pilot? How do we create a secondary market, which is the biggest issue, which is why it's multi-year. And I know they're doing that in Jamaica now, but it's IDB. The idea is to take it to the Caribbean if it's not being done elsewhere. And so all the commercial banks have signed up for this. And, I really believe that when we can crack that hurdle, I think for the creative sector, just in terms of access to capital, that will then just take off even more. Just wanted to share that.
Exactly. That is such great news, because actually I was talking about that with an IP lawyer last week, like she's lobbying for that, for financial institutions to be able to use, the IP as collateral. So that's a great move. And we'll end on that great news. And thank you so much, Jodi and Mariame. This was so insightful, and so many nuggets, were shared. What else? Oh, I have to say who is our winner of our session with and that is going to be Kathy-Ann Martin. Kathy-Ann, you won a session one-on-one with Jodi to explore a little bit more your business model. And, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everybody who tuned in this evening. And we look forward to next month's show when we're talking about intellectual property. So please join back on. But And everything is recorded, so you can, if you missed anything, I see some, like somebody says, you know, they joined late or whatever, it's all gonna be on our YouTube channel. So check out our YouTube channel, C15 Studios, and you can listen back to any of these great information that was shared this evening. So thank you so much, Jodi, Mariame, everybody who joined in, Maria for managing the back end. Have a great evening and see you next month.